Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Lindner. We're going to talk about a hot topic now that comes up typically around Thanksgiving time. If you're a carnivore and you eat turkey, the question around the table is usually, do you prefer dark meat or white meat? Do you want the breast? Do you want the leg? And some of the fibers are dark and some of the fibers look lighter or white meat. So, what makes something look dark? What makes something look light? So, if you have a muscle and that muscle has lots of blood supply, it's going to look red. It's going to look dark. And if it has lots of blood supply, it's probably because it needs lots of oxygen and lots of mitochondria for energy production to make it work. If the muscle is white, it's because it doesn't have a lot of blood going to it, which is red, doesn't have a lot of blood going to it, doesn't have lots of mitochondria, doesn't need lots of energy. So if we look at fast oxidative fibers, they're called fast because they contract quickly. Okay, think of how quick your eyes can move left to right. If you hear something or you're reading, your eyes can move quick. Okay. The If a muscle contracts quickly, it has a strong contraction, but it's going to fatigue quick. It contracts fast, but it's also fast to fatigue. Okay, it's fast to fatigue because it has few mitochondria, does not have the best blood supply, so it's going to fatigue quickly. If we look at slow oxidative fibers, they're slow because they're slow to contract. If they're slow to contract, they're slow to fatigue. They're slow to fatigue because they have lots of myoglobin. Sounds like hemoglobin. That's red pigment. If it has lots of blood going to it, it's going to have lots of oxygen. Lots of oxygen because the mitochondria are going to make lots of ATP. You have lots of ATP, that means you have lots of energy. That means you're not going to fatigue easily. So these slow fibers, these are like your calf muscles, your postural muscles. People who have great endurance that can run 26 miles, right, without fainting. Lots of ATP. Those are slow oxidative fibers, but this is going to be the dark meat. That's the dark meat. And the fast fibers, this is going to be the white meat. Okay. So if we think of the dark meat, well, the drumstick is always dark because turkeys walk around. They walk, they use their legs, their thighs, their quad muscles. So that's dark meat. You don't see turkeys flying around very much using the pectoralis muscle, the breast muscle. So the breast meat is going to be white meat. They're fast to contract, but they fatigue easily. Dark meat does not. Okay, so white meat, this is going to be the chicken breast. The red meat or the dark meat, that's going to be the chicken leg. Okay, and most humans, we have mixed fibers. We also have pink fibers as well, not just dark white, but even pink. So if we look up at the top and we look at the calf muscles, these are slow fibers. They're slow to contract. They're slow to fatigue, so they're fatigue resistant. But the eye muscles, these are fast. They move fast, but they also fatigue easily. Think about reading at night. When you read at night, your eyes get tired. They fatigue easily, and then you fall asleep. But you could be standing all day, and you can walk miles and miles without cramping up on your calves and going, oh my God, I got to sit down. I'm exhausted. Thank goodness to these slow fibers. Okay. In terms of muscle hypertrophy and muscle atrophy, muscle hypertrophy is what happens to muscles when you exercise them and you train. It's muscle growth, they hypertrophy, whereas muscle atrophy is the exact opposite of that. If there's the lack of activity, the muscle size is going to be reduced. Okay, so if someone has a stroke and their arm becomes paralyzed, the muscles become, they go through atrophy. If a person's arm is in a cast for months at a time and it's not being used, that limb will atrophy compared to the other side. When you exercise, you increase in the diameter, you increase in the number of fibers, and you also go through what's called mitochondrial biogenesis. You increase the number of mitochondria through exercise, and that gives you more energy. So the couch potato is always tired, and the one that's always exercising and on the go, they have lots of energy. That's the beauty of movement. Keeping your body in motion creates lots of mitochondria, creates lots of energy. A few more things about muscles, a few more facts. Between the ages of 30 and 50, about 10% of muscle tissue is replaced by fibrous connective tissue and fat. And then between the ages of 50 and 80, another 40% of our muscle tissue is replaced. And the consequence of that is you start to lose some muscle strength and you start to lose some flexibility and reflexes become slower, right? We know this happens when we see someone that may be elderly behind the wheel and they're driving. They often drive slow because the reflexes just aren't that quick. Okay. When I examine my patients and I shake their hand, I always turn their hand over. I look at the color of the nails. I want to make sure they're nice and pink and not pale and not blue. But I also look at the muscles. I look between the metacarpals because there's supposed to be muscle here. There's supposed to be muscle. If the muscle is atrophy, we call it sarcopenia. Sarcopenia. That is the breakdown of healthy muscle. This can happen with intense exercise. We've seen it happen in people that aren't properly trained well and they jump into CrossFit and they overdo it. They can put their body in a state of sarcopenia where the kidneys shut down, their muscle starts to break down, and the urine will be the color of black. Very dangerous. Sarcopenia can happen not just in athletes, but it can happen in the elderly if they're not consuming enough protein, and protein is needed to make muscle, then you get atrophy or sarcopenia. We'll see wasting in the hand. So I call these hills and valleys. When you start to see this hill and valley effect, then they're probably either not consuming enough protein in the diet or they lack enough digestive enzymes in the stomach and they can't break down the protein that they are consuming. So what I'll do often is I will check using a dynamometer, I'll check hand strength. The person squeezes this and then this needle will move upward and creates a second needle will be the marker and it stays in its place. When they release, this needle goes back, but the marker has a memory of how far the big needle moved, and it can measure it in kilograms or pounds of pressure. And we want to see nice symmetry between their right hand and left hand. If there's like a 10-pound difference or more between left and right hand, there's muscle atrophy or there's nerve damage coming from the neck down to the fingers. And we have to really take a close, deep look at that.